The Korean mafia boss watched in shock as the young African waitress gently fed his blind baby with such tenderness. From that moment on, he couldn't stop thinking about her and would move heaven and earth to find her again. A blind baby, a ruthless mafia boss, a compassionate waitress who disappeared into the night. He rules the city's underground with an iron fist, feared by everyone. But when an African waitress tenderly feeds his blind son in a crowded restaurant, something inside him breaks open. She vanishes without a trace, leaving him desperate to find the woman who showed his child more love in 5 minutes than he'd seen in a lifetime. But she didn't just disappear, she's running for her life from rival criminals who want her dead. What happens when the most dangerous man in the city discovers the woman who touched his soul is being hunted? This is their story. A tale of redemption, forbidden love, and the power of compassion in the darkest places. If you love intense mafia romance with heart, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe because this journey is just beginning. Let's dive in. The Golden Pearl restaurant buzzed with Friday night energy. Clinking glasses, laughter, the sizzle of grills in the open kitchen. Amara wiped down table 7 for the 3rd time, her dark eyes scanning the crowd with practiced efficiency. 24 years old, lean and graceful, she moved through the chaos like water flowing around stones. She didn't notice him at first. Kang Min-jun entered through the back entrance, flanked by 2 men whose hands never left their jacket pockets. The restaurant's noise didn't exactly stop, but it shifted. Conversations became quieter. Eyes darted away. The manager appeared instantly, bowing low. "Mr. Kang, your private room is ready. The main floor is fine." His voice was cold silk, Korean accent barely detectable. 32 years old, Min-jun wore a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars. His face was beautiful in a dangerous way. Sharp cheekbones, eyes that missed nothing, a mouth that rarely smiled. In his arms, he carried an 8-month-old baby. The child whimpered, tiny fists rubbing at eyes that would never see. Min-jun's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His bodyguards positioned themselves at nearby tables, clearing the area without saying a word. People simply moved. Amara grabbed her notepad, approaching the table before her manager could stop her. She didn't know who he was. She'd only been in the city 6 weeks, working double shifts to save money, to stay hidden. "Good evening, sir. Can I—" She stopped mid-sentence. The baby was crying now, frustrated, hungry. Min-jun held him awkwardly, like he was holding a bomb. A bottle sat untouched on the table. The child's searching hands waved in the air, and something in Amara's chest cracked open. "May I?" She didn't wait for permission, setting down her notepad and reaching for the baby. Min-jun's bodyguards moved instantly, but he held up one hand. His eyes locked on Amara's face, really looked at her for the first time. No fear. No recognition of who he was, just genuine concern for a crying child. He handed over his son. Amara settled the baby against her chest with practiced ease. "Hey, little one," she murmured in accented English, her native Swahili softening the words. "You're okay. Let's get you comfortable." She adjusted the bottle, tested the temperature on her wrist, then began feeding him with one hand while supporting his head with the other. The baby latched on immediately, small body relaxing. Min-jun stared. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. The most feared man in the city's underground watched a stranger care for his blind son with more tenderness than anyone in Min-jun's organization had ever shown. She hummed softly, some African lullaby he didn't recognize, and the baby's tiny hand wrapped around her finger. "He was just frustrated," Amara said softly, meeting Min-jun's eyes. "Babies know when we're tense. He can feel it." "You have children?" His voice was quieter than before. "No, but I grew up in a village where everyone raised everyone's children." She smiled at the baby, and Min-jun felt something he hadn't experienced in years, warmth spreading through his chest like whiskey on a cold night. For 5 minutes, she fed his son, talked to the child in gentle tones, burped him expertly, coaxing up air with gentle pats. The baby cooed, actually cooed, against her shoulder. When she finally handed him back, the child was drowsy and content. "Thank you," Min-jun said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised him. "Of course." Amara retrieved her notepad, professional mask sliding back into place. What can I get you for dinner? He ordered without looking at the menu, but his eyes never left her face. She had a small scar above her right eyebrow. Wore no makeup. Her server's uniform was clean, but worn. There was kindness in her eyes that he hadn't seen in his world for so long, he'd forgotten it existed. When she walked away, his second-in-command leaned in. Sir? Find out everything about her. Amara's hands shook as she delivered Minjun's order. She'd felt his eyes on her all evening, intense, searching. When she set down his plate, he spoke. What's your name? Amara. She kept her voice steady, professional. I know who you are now. She'd asked the kitchen staff during her break. Their terrified reactions told her everything. Kang Minjun, the name that made grown men cross the street. Leader of the city's most powerful criminal organization. Her blood ran cold. I should apologize, she said carefully, for touching your son without permission. Don't. The word was sharp, then softer. You have nothing to apologize for. He responded to you. He never. Minjun looked down at his sleeping son. He doesn't usually let strangers hold him. Maybe he sensed I wasn't a threat. Unlike you, her tone implied. Minjun's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close. Smart woman. When her shift ended at midnight, Amara changed quickly in the employee room, stuffing her tips into her backpack. She took the service exit, pulling her hood up against the autumn rain. She made it 3 blocks before she saw them. 2 men. Not Minjun's. These wore different colors, moved with different purpose. They'd been following her for days, ever since she'd fled the last city. The Zhao organization didn't forget debts, and Amara had witnessed something she shouldn't have. Her heart hammered. She ducked into an alley, knowing it was a mistake even as she did it. They cornered her against a brick wall. Ms. Okonkwo, one said in Mandarin accented English, you've been very difficult to find. I don't know what you're talking about. Your brother borrowed money from Mr. Zhao. Then you saw our business transaction at the warehouse. Now your brother's dead, and you disappeared. He stepped closer. We can't have witnesses. Amara's mind raced. Her brother Kofi had gotten involved with loan sharks in the last city. She'd gone to meet him at the warehouse, walked in on a deal she wasn't supposed to see. They'd killed Kofi. She'd run. For 6 weeks, she'd been running. Please, she whispered. I didn't tell anyone. I just want to disappear. You will, permanently. The man reached inside his coat. That's far enough. All 3 of them froze. Kang Minjun stood at the alley entrance, flanked by 4 bodyguards. Rain dripped from his perfectly styled hair. His eyes were flat, cold. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mr. Kang. The Zhao enforcer's voice wavered. This doesn't concern you. Doesn't it? Minjun walked forward slowly. His men spread out, cutting off escape routes. You're threatening someone under my protection. Amara's breath caught. Under his protection? They'd met hours ago. We didn't know she was yours. Now you do. Minjun's voice could have cut glass. Tell Zhao that Ms. Okonkwo is off limits. If anyone from your organization comes near her again, I'll consider it a declaration of war, and Zhao knows how those end for him. The 2 men practically ran from the alley. Silence fell. Amara pressed against the wall, trying to process what just happened. Minjun approached slowly, stopping a respectful distance away. You have 5 seconds to explain, he said quietly, why Zhao's men are hunting you. She told him. Everything spilled out. Kofi's debts, the warehouse, the murder she'd witnessed, 6 weeks of running. When she finished, Minjun's expression hadn't changed, but something flickered in his eyes. You've been alone this whole time? I'm used to it. Not anymore. He pulled out his phone, spoke rapid Korean. When he hung up, he looked at her directly. You'll stay in one of my properties, guarded, safe, until this is resolved. I can't. It's not a request, Amara. Zhao doesn't let witnesses live. If I hadn't followed you tonight. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Why? She whispered. Why would you help me? You don't know me. Minjun was quiet for a long moment. You held my son like he was precious. In my world, people see Jay as a liability, a blind child who weakens me. But you saw a baby who needed care. His voice dropped. That's rarer than you know. The penthouse was ridiculous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that probably cost more than Amara had earned in her entire life. Minjun's men swept the space, then positioned themselves outside. "The bedroom is yours," Minjun said, pointing down a hallway. "I'll take the couch. This is your home. One of them. And you need sleep more than I do." He was already setting up baby Jay's portable crib near the couch, movements practiced despite their awkwardness. Amara watched him struggle with the crib's folding mechanism. After 30 seconds, she stepped forward. "May I?" Together, they assembled it. Their hands brushed once, and electricity shot up Amara's arm. She pulled back quickly. "Thank you," Minjun said. "For earlier, at the restaurant. Jay's mother died in childbirth. I don't. I'm not good at this. He can feel your love, even if you don't know how to show it." "Can he?" Minjun's laugh was bitter. "I built an empire on fear, Amara. I've destroyed families, made men disappear. My son deserves better than a father who only knows violence." "Then give him better." She met his eyes steadily. "You're choosing to protect me. That's not violence. That's humanity." Something shifted in his expression. For just a moment, the cold mask cracked, and she saw the man underneath, tired, lonely, desperate to be more than his reputation. Jay whimpered. Amara moved automatically, lifting the baby, settling him against her chest. The child relaxed immediately, tiny head finding her heartbeat. Minjun stared at them, this beautiful woman holding his son with such natural grace. She was everything his world wasn't, gentle, honest, kind, and she was in danger because she'd done the right thing. "I'll destroy Zhao," he said quietly. "For what he did to your brother, for threatening you." "No." Amara's voice was firm. "No more violence on my behalf. Promise me." "I can't promise that." "Then promise you'll try. Promise you'll find another way." He wanted to refuse. In his world, threats were eliminated, not negotiated with. But looking at her holding his son, both of them bathed in city light from the windows, Minjun felt something crack in his chest. "I promise to try." She smiled, and it transformed her face. Minjun felt his carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. That night, neither of them slept. He worked on his laptop while she sat on the floor playing with Jay, showing the blind baby different textures: silk, cotton, the rough weave of a blanket. The child laughed, really laughed, and Minjun stopped typing to just. "Listen, you're good with him," he said finally. "All children need is presence, attention, to know they're valued." She looked up at him. "Even feared mafia bosses were children once. That child died a long time ago." "Did he? Or did he just learn to hide?" The question hung in the air. Minjun had no answer. He'd spent 15 years building armor, becoming untouchable, unkillable. But this woman had walked into his life 6 hours ago and was dismantling everything with simple compassion. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" he asked. Amara was quiet for a moment, stroking Jay's soft hair. "Because fear is what they want. The people who hurt my brother, the people who make others suffer, they feed on fear. But you?" She met his eyes. "You protected me. Threatened war for a stranger. That's not a monster. That's a man trying to be better. You don't know what I've done." "No. But I know what you're choosing to do right now. That matters more." As dawn broke over the city, Minjun made a decision that would change everything. He'd spent years building an empire. Now, for the woman holding his son and the child who'd never see his face, he'd tear it all down if necessary. Because for the first time in 15 years, Kang Minjun had something worth protecting that wasn't power. He had hope. 3 weeks passed in the penthouse. 3 weeks where Amara's world shrunk to floor-to-ceiling windows, a baby's laughter, and Minjun's increasingly frequent presence. He'd arrive each evening around 7, still wearing his suit but with tie loosened, exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes. The first thing he'd do was reach for Jay. The second was look for Amara. "You didn't have to cook," he said on the 18th night, finding her in his kitchen with ingredients she'd convinced his bodyguards to buy. "I was going crazy just sitting here." She stirred the pot of jollof rice, her mother's recipe, adapted with what she could find. "Besides, your men only know how to order takeout. Jay needs real food. Minjun leaned against the counter, watching her move with practiced grace. She'd started wearing clothes his assistant bought, simple dresses, soft sweaters. Her hair was loose tonight, natural curls framing her face. She was beautiful, and she had no idea the effect she had on him. Zhao's been quiet, he said finally. Too quiet. Amara's hands stilled. What does that mean? It means he's planning something. My sources say he's been meeting with the Volkov organization, Russians who've been trying to move into my territory for years. Can't you just talk to him? Negotiate? Minjun's laugh was hollow. That's not how this world works, Amara. Zhao sees weakness. He strikes. Right now, you're that weakness. Because of me, you might have a war. Because of Zhao, your brother is dead. Minjun's voice hardened. Because of Zhao, you've been running for months. Don't take responsibility for his choices. She turned to face him fully. And what about your choices? How many people have disappeared because they crossed you? How many families have been destroyed? The question hung between them like a blade. Minjun could have deflected, could have shut down the conversation with cold authority. Instead, he met her eyes. Too many. I tell myself they were necessary. That in this world, you're either feared or you're dead. But lately? He looked toward the living room where Jay slept peacefully in his crib. Lately, I wonder if the price was too high. Amara stepped closer. Then change. You have power. Use it differently. It's not that simple. The windows exploded. Glass shattered inward as bullets tore through the penthouse. Minjun moved on pure instinct, tackling Amara to the ground, his body covering hers. She screamed, not for herself, but for Jay. Jay, she gasped. Stay down, Minjun barked. He crawled toward the living room on his elbows, military-trained movements despite the suit. His bodyguards burst through the door, weapons drawn, returning fire toward the building across the street. Minjun reached the crib. Jay was screaming, terrified by the noise. Minjun scooped up his son with one arm, combat crawling back to Amara. We're leaving, now. They moved as a unit, bodyguards forming a protective circle as they evacuated down the service stairs. Amara held Jay against her chest, murmuring reassurances the baby couldn't hear over his own crying. Minjun's hand never left the small of her back. They emerged in the underground garage. 3 black SUVs waited, engines running. Minjun pushed Amara and Jay into the middle vehicle, sliding in beside them. Drive, he commanded. As they sped through the city, Minjun made rapid-fire calls in Korean. His face was a mask of cold fury. When he finally hung up, his knuckles were white. Zhao made his move, he said quietly. He's declared open war. The Volkovs are backing him. Amara clutched Jay tighter. What does that mean? It means nowhere in this city is safe anymore. It means he's willing to kill you, my son, anyone close to me to prove he won't be intimidated. Minjun's jaw clenched. It means I have to end this. How? He didn't answer, didn't need to. The violence in his eyes said everything. No. Amara's voice was firm despite her fear. You promised. You promised to try another way. That was before they shot at my son. The words exploded out of him. Before they tried to kill you. I can't. He stopped, breathing hard. I can't lose you. Either of you. The confession hung in the air. Jay had quieted, lulled by the car's movement and Amara's heartbeat. She looked at Minjun, really looked at him, saw the man beneath the monster everyone feared, saw someone who'd learned to survive through violence and didn't know any other way. Then don't fight, she said softly. Not with guns and blood. Fight smarter. There is no smart in war. Then don't have a war. Have a checkmate. The safe house was a fortress disguised as a countryside estate, 50 miles outside the city, surrounded by guards, cameras, and enough security to protect a head of state. Minjun's most trusted men occupied the grounds. Inside, Amara paced the master bedroom while Jay slept in a reinforced nursery next door. Minjun found her at 3 a.m., staring out bulletproof windows at the dark forest. Can't sleep? He asked. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the glass breaking. She wrapped her arms around herself. This is my fault. If I'd never gone to that warehouse. If you'd never gone, you'd never have known your brother was in danger. And I'd never have met you. He moved closer, stopping just behind her. I don't regret that. Even with everything happening, I don't regret you. Amara turned. They were inches apart. She could see the exhaustion in his face, the weight of impossible decisions. What are you going to do? I've been making calls. Zhao's partnership with the Volkovs is fragile, based on mutual greed, not trust. If I can offer Volkov something better, he'll turn on Zhao in a heartbeat. And Zhao? Without Volkov's backing, Zhao's organization is vulnerable. I won't need to destroy him. His own people will when they realize he led them into a losing war. Minjun's smile was sharp. He wanted to prove I was weak. Instead, he's shown everyone he's reckless. That's brilliant, Amara admitted. It's survival, but it'll take time, and until it's done, you and Jay need to stay hidden. I need to know you're safe. And you? You'll be in the city, exposed while we hide here? I've been a target my whole life. I know how to stay alive. That's not the same as living. She reached up, touching his face gently. He froze at the contact. When did you last do something just because it made you happy? Not strategic, not necessary, just happy? Minjun leaned into her touch despite himself. I don't remember. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. The space between them crackled with tension. Minjun's hand came up to cover hers. You make me want to remember. You and Jay. You make me want to be someone worthy of that happiness. You already are. You just have to choose it. He kissed her then, soft at first, questioning. When she kissed back, rising on her toes to meet him fully, something in Minjun's chest cracked open. She tasted like hope, like every good thing he'd convinced himself he didn't deserve. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Minjun rested his forehead against hers. I need to go back to the city tomorrow. Finish this. But when it's done... He pulled back to look in her eyes. When it's done, I'm leaving. The organization, the violence, all of it. I'll find someone else to run it. Someone who won't put my family in danger. Family? You, Jay, if you'll have us. His voice was raw with vulnerability. I know it's insane. We barely know each other. But you've changed everything, Amara. I can't go back to who I was before you. Tears slid down her cheeks. I see you, the real you. And yes to all of it. He kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring 15 years of loneliness into the connection between them. Outside, his empire was crumbling. Inside, he was finally building something real. The next morning, Minjun left for the city. He moved through meetings with cold precision, offering Volkov shipping routes and territory in exchange for abandoning Zhao. Within 48 hours, the Russian had agreed. Zhao's organization fractured as lieutenants realized their boss had overplayed his hand, but Zhao himself disappeared. He's gone underground, Minjun's second-in-command reported. We're searching. Find him. I want this ended. Minjun stared at the city from his temporary office. He'd already chosen his successor, a trusted man who understood the business without the bloodlust. Soon, he'd walk away from this life entirely. The call came at midnight. Zhao had been found, cornered in a warehouse by his own betrayed men. They wanted Minjun's permission to handle it. Minjun thought of his promise to Amara. Thought of the man he wanted to become. Let them have him, he said finally. I want nothing to do with it. It wasn't mercy, it was evolution. 6 months later, the countryside estate had transformed from safe house to home. Minjun had been true to his word. He'd walked away from the organization, keeping only enough connections to ensure his family's safety. The man who'd once ruled the city's underground now spent his mornings feeding breakfast to a 1-year-old who laughed at the sound of his voice. Amara stood in the doorway, watching them. Jay sat in his high chair, hands exploring the textures of cut fruit. Minjun guided the baby's fingers patiently, describing each piece. Strawberry, soft and sweet. Banana, smooth, a little squishy. You're a natural, Amara said. Minjun looked up, and his smile, real, unguarded, still took her breath away. I have a good teacher. She moved into the kitchen, kissing the top of Jay's head before wrapping her arms around Minjun from behind. Your mother called. She's excited to meet us next week. Terrified is more accurate. I haven't brought anyone home in 10 years. He turned in her embrace. She won't believe I'm engaged. Amara held up her left hand, where a simple gold band caught the morning light. Better get used to it. We're getting married in 3 months. Not long enough. I'd marry you today if you'd let me. Patience. I want your mother's blessing first. They'd spent 6 months learning each other, Amara discovering that Minjun loved old jazz and couldn't cook to save his life. Minjun learning that Amara sang when she was nervous and had a wicked sense of humor beneath her gentle exterior. They'd built something neither had expected, a family. Jay babbled happily, fruit-sticky hands reaching for Minjun's face. The man who'd once made grown men fear for their lives laughed, catching tiny fingers and pretending to eat them. Jay shrieked with delight. I never thought I could have this, Minjun said quietly. What? A sticky baby and a fiancé who burns toast? Peace, joy. Mornings that don't start with threat assessments. He pulled her closer. You gave me a life worth living, Amara. Not just surviving, actually living. We gave each other that. You showed me I didn't have to keep running, that I could trust someone with my whole heart. Later that afternoon, Minjun's former second-in-command arrived, now the organization's leader. He brought news. Zhao's remaining associates had been handled by their own people. The threat was completely eliminated. No blood on Minjun's hands. The transition is complete, the man reported. No one will bother you or your family again. You have my word. Minjun nodded once. Thank you, for everything. When the man left, Amara found Minjun in Jay's nursery, holding their sleeping son. Tears tracked silently down his face. Minjun? I keep thinking about who I was, the things I did, the families I destroyed. His voice cracked. I don't deserve this peace, this happiness. Amara crossed to him, placing her hand over his heart. The man who did those things doesn't exist anymore. You chose to change. You chose love over power, family over empire. That takes more courage than ruling through fear ever did. You really believe that? I know it. Because I see you every day, teaching Jay colors he'll never see by sound and texture, reading him stories with voices that make him giggle, building a garden so he can learn about growing things instead of destroying them. She cupped his face. You're not the monster anymore, Minjun. You're the man who slayed him. He kissed her then, deep and grateful. Jay stirred between them, making small, contented sounds. They pulled apart, both smiling. 3 months until the wedding, Minjun murmured. Think you can handle being married to a reformed criminal? Only if you can handle being married to a woman who'll call you out every time you slip into crime boss voice with the neighbors. He laughed, full and genuine. Deal. The evening sun streamed through windows that no longer needed to be bulletproof. In the distance, Amara could see the garden she'd started, vegetables and flowers growing side by side. Tomorrow they'd take Jay to the village nearby for the festival. Next week, they'd meet Minjun's family in Seoul. Next month, Amara's surviving relatives would fly in from Kenya for the wedding. It was beautifully, wonderfully normal. That night, after Jay was asleep, they sat on the porch watching fireflies. Minjun pulled Amara against his chest, both of them wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill. Do you ever miss it? She asked. The power? The control? No, I don't miss being alone in a room full of people. I don't miss wondering who'll betray me next. I don't miss being a monster my son would grow up to fear. He kissed her temple. I miss nothing about that life. Even though you were good at it, being good at something doesn't mean it's good for you. You taught me that. He paused. Besides, I found something I'm better at. What's that? Loving you, being Jay's father, building instead of destroying. He turned her to face him. You walked into my life feeding my son in a crowded restaurant, and you changed everything. You didn't see the mafia boss. You saw a struggling father who needed help. You saw the man I could become. And you saw a scared woman running from her past and gave her a future. We saved each other. Somewhere in the darkness, Jay made a small sound in his sleep. Both of them stilled, listening, but the baby settled. Minjun relaxed. He's getting better at sleeping through the night. Because he feels safe. Children know when they're loved. So do adults. Minjun murmured. I love you, Amara. My light in the darkness. The woman who taught a monster how to be human. I love you too, my beautiful broken man who chose to heal instead of hide. They sat in comfortable silence as stars emerged overhead. The man who'd ruled through fear now found strength in gentleness. The woman who'd run for months now stood her ground beside someone worth staying for. And the blind baby who'd brought them together slept peacefully, surrounded by more love than either parent had ever known. In the village below, people knew them as the quiet couple with the adorable baby, Minjun as a retired businessman, Amara as the kind woman who volunteered at the community center. No one knew about the empire he'd abandoned or the organization that had hunted her. Those lives were ghosts now, fading in the rearview mirror. Ready for tomorrow? Amara asked. The village festival would be their first major public appearance as a family. As long as you're beside me, I'm ready for anything. She smiled against his chest. Even my aunt asking when we're giving Jay a sibling? Even that, though maybe we should practice first. His voice dropped, playful and intimate. Kang Minjun, our son is 20 feet away. Our son is asleep, and we're engaged. Perfectly appropriate. She laughed, the sound filling the night air. He'd learned to make her laugh. She'd learned to trust completely. Together, they'd built something neither thought possible. As midnight approached, they moved inside. Minjun checked on Jay one last time, watching the baby's chest rise and fall. Amara joined him, slipping her hand into his. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For seeing me, for believing in me, for giving me a reason to be better. You did the hard part. You chose to change. Only because you showed me it was possible. They stood together in the doorway of their son's room, two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. The darkness of his past and the terror of hers had led them both to this moment, standing in a peaceful home, watching their child sleep, planning a future filled with love instead of fear. It wasn't the ending either of them expected. It was better. Because sometimes the most dangerous man in the city just needs someone brave enough to see the human beneath the reputation. And sometimes a woman running from her past needs someone strong enough to help her build a future. Together, they'd found what both had been searching for. Home. The end.